President Trump said that he will take action later in the day to impose steep tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Trump tweeted this, looking forward to 3:30 p.m. meeting today at the White House, which will be 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here in LA. And Trump continued, we have to protect and build our steel and aluminum industries. And North Korea blinks. According to South Korean government officials, North Korea is willing to give up their nuclear weapons ambition. And it's United States versus California. The Trump administration sued California over sanctuary protections. So who gets to decide immigration law from here on out? Is it the federal government or does it now belong to the state of California? We'll analyze it. Hi, I'm Michael Wan, your host for Michael Wan's Op-Ed Live. And this is Ben Pak, former deputy for California Senate Pro Tem Kevin De Leon and candidate for the California Board of Equalization seat. Op-Ed Live is not about left or right. It's about finding out what's right or wrong. Okay, our first topic is U.S. tariffs. So this has been the hot topic since last week. It seems like many Democrats and Republicans are both against Trump's tariffs idea. In the Republican side, more than 100 Republican lawmakers implored President Trump to drop plans for stiff and sweeping steel and aluminum tariffs. But President Trump seems unimpressed as usual. And today, Trump asked even China to help out reduce America's trade deficit to China by $100 billion. Your thoughts on this whole thing, Ben?
Well, I've been following it, and as you know, imposing the tariffs on steel or aluminum is not the first time it's been done. It's been done in the past as well.
During George W. Bush, I think he did it once, right?
And history shows that it did not really work to the advantage of the United States. Therefore, he is trying to do it again. What is different now is that in the past, it was done in a diplomatic, sort of delineated way. Right now, because Trump is putting in the forefront America first type of mission, the whole world is against the whole idea, and then he throws numbers as well as dates or what he's going to do. Or like yesterday, they were saying that, you know, we take it back. Mexico and Canada is not included, and it's like, well, today they were talking about, well, maybe, but at a lower rate.
They might be exempted, yeah.
We really have no idea as to what's going to happen at 12:30. This whole thing, I think, is for him to follow through on some of the campaign promises he had made, and that this is perhaps one way for him to curb the trade deficit with China. But because he cannot really target one country or one area, now he kind of opened the can of worms, and then somehow everybody was included, including Europe and South America.
South Korea too.
South Korea, they're talking about NAFTA trade. So all of a sudden he realizes, wait a minute, maybe my tweets and what I've been just kind of like talking before he thinks is kind of coming back. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen at 12:30 today.
Okay, so President Trump, he's been talking about trade deals imbalance ever since his campaign days, right? Since June 16th of 2015. And if you look back on his interviews, it goes all the way back to the 80s. You know, back in, I think, 1988, when he did an interview with Oprah Winfrey, he complained about American, trade deficits.
I wasn't interested back then, and I'm not interested now.
It all came out now. So I think he has a good point, because it was 71 years of uneven trade deals since the Second World War, according to economists. And I think the world's middle class kind of got better during those trade deals, but America's middle class, especially in the Rust Belt and Middle America, suffered tremendously. And they lost a lot of jobs, especially factories, people who worked in factories in like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So Trump, this was a huge campaign promise. It was one of his trademark campaign promise. I think probably more than the wall. I think the constituents in Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and these states, they care more about this tariffs. I bet they are really excited about it. I saw some of the interviews who are in the U.S. steel industry. If you think about it, all of the American steel companies, they all got decimated. We only have like one U.S. steel company and one aluminum company. And I think President Trump said this, that, economy security equals national security. And I agree with him on that, because if you cannot just rely on military sales, you need other sales to have enough profit. If, for instance, if America doesn't have any steel company, if steel company goes out of business, and also aluminum, it's hard for them during, I mean, hypothetically, like wartime, to produce their own weapons. So I think there had to be some kind of protection. It was long overdue, and I think Trump is going the right direction. I always, I told you that I believe Trump had a very good chance to become president of the United States. It's because exactly of this kind of election promises, campaign promises that he made. And if you come to think about it, the prices, it's not that much of a big deal. Like, I think Trump is playing the long game. Wall Street, they always focus more on the short-term gain. And especially if you go to the mainstream media, most of their advertisers are global companies, right? So of course they're all in the same pocket. But I think Trump, he was talking about these trade deals, trade deficit issues for the forgotten men and women. You heard about that, right? Forgotten men and women, the people who came out.
Yeah. Segment of his voters.
Yeah, so it's like 25% on steel and 10% aluminum right now. Probably some percentage might be a little bit different to countries like Canada and Mexico. That is remain to be seen. So if you look at it, like I checked some numbers on it, and that only comes out for like $9 billion of tariffs. It's a very tiny fraction, compared to the entire trade deal amount. And if you look at the can of beer, okay, like for instance, like can of Campbell soup, Campbell soup,
Yes.
like 2.6 cents of steel goes into that. 2.6 cents. If that goes up by 25%, that's about like 6/10 of 1 cent of the price of the can of soup. Campbell soup is like $1.99. So it's like $2 and something. So I don't think like consumers would take a tremendous hit. Probably the global companies, they would, if cumulatively. So I think in the consumer standpoint, I think this is not that much of a sacrifice. And like Coca-Cola has 3 cents worth of aluminum in it. If it goes up 10%, that means 3/10 of a cent. It's around $1.49 to buy a can of Coke. So I think, I think Trump is on the right direction, and we need to really resolve this trade deficit issue. It's been ballooning like crazy, and I think Trump is on the right track on that.
Okay. You spoke for a long time.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Remember, to begin with, I think the middle class in the United States is doing well. I don't
You think so?
Yes.
I disagree.
Number two, Trump takes this very American first approach, which alienates the rest of the country, and United States is the biggest global economy in the world. If you kind of break it down into cents, of course, when you come to one kind of Coke,
for consumers.
but we're talking about in a very, very broad spectrum, and it's not just cans of soup and Coca-Cola. We're talking about vehicles. We're talking about everything that is made and then comes back to the United States. The trade deficit, in a way, is just numbers, because at the end of the day, anything that goes out, okay, it comes back to the United States, a lot of it.
If it came back, we wouldn't have the trade deficit, I would say.
In a trade deficit as to what gets imported and what gets exported, you're going to have that, difference. But at the end of the day, most of it ends up coming back in one form or another. My worry about this thing is, you say that in the long term, he's playing the long-term game.
I think he's playing the long-term game.
I feel totally the opposite. In the long term, if this is the way it does happen, then he's going to alienate a lot of the trade deals and why the United States has been so prosperous in the world economy.
Okay. I think he's trying to revive the Rust Belt. If you see his policies, it's very much oriented towards those voters who voted for him during the 2016 election. And he's telling, I think, Wall Street to be a little bit patient about it and increase more purchasing power to the middle class rather than focusing more on cheap products. Of course, cheap products can help. I would say it helps probably to the cosmopolitan area, like LA, New York, the cities that doesn't have to rely too much on manufacturing. Of course, for us it's like nothing, but the people I'm talking about in middle America, especially the factories that have been disappeared like 70-80% of them disappeared since Second World War. And I don't think they have any good jobs now. So I think he's trying to revive that. I think he's trying to spread out the wealth, not just to the coastal areas, but also that the wealth can flow into Middle America. That's why I think he's trying to do that. And his Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, I think he and Trump and Peter Navarro, he's a director for U.S. trade. They're all very, their view of American economy is very similar, in my opinion. So I think it will go down that road.
And that is the danger. You said that only the people who are thinking the same way are staying, and then people like Gary Cohn are leaving because
he's a globalist, right?
Although he was one of the top advisors, he decided to leave because he can no longer believe in what's going on. You know, Trump, the way he does things, he only concentrates on one thing, or is very self-centered in the sense that if you were to help the Rust Belt or help this aluminum and steel, then I'm fulfilling my promise, and then things are going to get better. In a global sense, you know, we're the #1 consumer in the world. Therefore, you cannot be so centric, and you cannot be concentrating on something small, because things change all the time. And then manufacturing, yes, it has left the United States because consumers want better product at a cheaper price, and that's why it has happened.
Well,
Imagine if we did not bring any vehicles, and then we only stayed with American-made vehicles throughout the whole this period. I mean, I don't know what could have happened, but we would not have the technological advances that we have, and we would not have the quality that we have, because it is a fact that American-made vehicles, you know, before the entering of the Japanese vehicles, were kind of subpar compared to the Japanese industry. That's why the #1 sellers of sedans in the United States is not American-made, it's foreign-made.
No, but what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that there should be no trade deals. Of course, we should have trade deals. What I'm saying is America has been taken advantage of, and especially the consumers. The global companies, of course, they like outsourcing, like I told you many times before. You know, they like their factories outside. And you're talking about like Japanese products being better, of course, because they didn't have any labor rights in Japan. They don't have those, you know, benefits like here in the United States, like GM. So that's why there was a comparative advantage on the Japanese company side, because they didn't have to keep their labor laws because they pretty much had none. So I think that's probably a different matter. You said American middle class is doing good. I don't think they are doing good. The middle class income, the middle class income hasn't changed for 17 years if you compare that to the inflation. You know, but if you look at the top 10% of Americans, especially 1%, it has been growing up dramatically.
And Trump is making them richer now.
So yeah, but middle class also got some tax cuts. So I think that's a plus. So what Trump is trying to say is, other countries took too much advantage of. So they were pretty much already declaring trade war. America was stupid enough to just take it, because you say trade deficit is okay. I don't think it's okay. Right now we have $20 trillion of debt in the United States. That's a big issue. I don't think you can just keep on printing money and just pile up the deficit. I don't think that's a good thing. And especially many of that deficit, of course, it came out from the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, but it also came tremendously, especially from China and Japan and Germany. Those the deficit came from a lot of these trade deficits. And it's not like the numbers are pretty much staying the same. Every single year, it's like quadrupling, 10 times more. It's like crazy levels. So I think that we need to put a stop to this, and we can't just ignore these forgotten men. I know the mainstream media try to portray them as like rednecks and these stupid people who voted for Trump who doesn't know anything of what's going on in the world. He's trying to revive this. I don't think they can all of a sudden become like an IT genius, or they can jump to the service sector. We can't just ignore the people who got ignored for the past 2-3 decades. That's what I'm just trying to say.
Well, you need to change with the times. If you're manufacturing horse carriage and you want to revive that industry, I don't think that would be a sensible thing. You do have to change. The technology is advancing. There are other places that the workforce can go and divert their sort of skills to it.
But China,
I'm not saying that steel and aluminum is dead, but if do to the consumers, this is not an industry that can flourish, I think would be a very foolish thing to do to try to continue pounding on something that, because truth to be told, the average consumer in the United States probably doesn't really care about the deficit or doesn't even know how many trillions of dollars are in the deficit with which country. Bottom line is when they want to buy something, they want it cheap and good. And if everybody understood sort of the whole implication in world economy and all that, maybe things would change. But in a very centric way, people don't really go that far. They just want to, you're making a certain amount of money, and this is how much I want to pay for my sneakers, this is how much I want to pay for my laundry machine, and that's usually what they think.
No, but I think other countries has been protecting. Like in South Korea, I do know that the South Korean government did exercise some protectionism. China does too. It's very hard to sell goods, American products there. They put a whole bunch of tariffs there. So like Caterpillar, for instance, they had a very difficult time competing against like a Japanese company called Komatsu. So because America is always trying to play the fair game. They follow by the books. But a lot of these countries in, I would say, Asia and also in Europe, they didn't. So that's why America was pretty much taken advantage of. And I think we do. General Mattis even said it's a economy security, is national security, because we are down to only one producer for armor plate vehicle, and he said if that company goes out of business, we have none, and it's very difficult to buy things at that time. So I believe 100% that Trump is going on the right track on this. Of course, the globalists and the Republican establishment, they don't get a lot of donor money from them. So of course they're not going to say they're not going to fight for the Rust Belt people. They're going to fight for the globalists. So I think let's see how this plays out. He's going to announce 12/30. I don't know whether South Korea is going to be included. South Korean government wishes that they're not included in this, but let's
We'll see.
we'll see.
They could fall victim of this whole thing, and who's to say?
Yeah.
That's why nowadays I really don't comment too much, because it seems like you can formulate an opinion, but everything changes
In a way,
an hour.
Yeah, you're right. And I would say free trade is the Republican Party position.
That's one of their
yeah,
pillars.
Yeah, Democratic Party is more of a protectionism standpoint. So Trump is a little bit different on this. That's why more than 100 Republicans came out against him. So okay, we move on to our next topic. North Korea blinks. North Korea's dictator Kim Jong-un has told South Korean diplomats that he is willing to negotiate with the United States on abandoning North Korea's nuclear weapons. Kim Jong-un also said he would suspend all nuclear and missile tests. Ben, should we believe this guy? What's your take on this?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think talks are great. I think the fact that they are extending an olive branch, and then they're meeting, and then there's now talks of an envoy coming to the United States, talking to the Trump administration, those are all good signs. But let's historically look at how the North Korean regime has done this. From Kim Jong-un to his father to his grandfather, this is how they've done things, for the past 60 years.
You're right, exactly.
I mean, they threaten, they do these things, and then they go, you know what, we change our mind, now we want to talk. They get their sanctions lifted, they get aid, they get money. How do you think they develop the nuclear weapons and the nuclear program that they have right now? About 10 or 12 years ago, same thing happened, and then South Korea sent
2005,
them food, they send them money, and then with all that money, instead of giving it to the people, we should have known that starvation was still happening, and we had proof that all that aid was not going to the people of North Korea, and all of a sudden we see ICBMs, we see missiles. It's like, where did that money come from?
I think probably that money came from all the aid that they got, right?
Yeah. And I believe it's the same thing. And of course, I'd love to see a unified Korea or peace in Korea, because he is not just a threat to South Korea, he's a threat to the whole world, and the destabilization of that area, you would have huge impact throughout the whole world and the whole economy. United States right now, we're worried about China and what is happening in China, and then the next China is going to be Vietnam, because now they're kind of getting the idea from China, and then free trade is flowing and the red tape is not like it used to be. So let's imagine that whole region becomes sort of the number one area of manufacturing is happening, which it is. But were to happen, or the nuclear bomb were to go off somewhere, we're talking
You're right.
about nobody can predict. So bottom line is that once again, do not fall prey of the
Okay.
North Korean regime of how they do things.
I agree with you 100%. I think we cannot believe North Korean government. They are playing another game, I think. And also, I believe probably the UN sanctions and the United States sanctions and the sanctions all over the world is working. Probably that's all of a sudden a reason why North Korea was actually hell-bent on building up ICBM and nuclear weapons. But now all of a sudden they're willing to denuclearize themselves. It's very hard to believe. So even though if they do, I think it would be like a time plan that they would probably play like later on down the road, they would go back to,
Secretly.
secretly. So I think if you have to have United States government or the UN, if they do agree with what they say that they're going to do, then they have to get rid of all the nuclear weapons and all the ICBM. They have to stop all the ICBM tests immediately, and they have to allow the UN inspections to probably stop by every week or every month, to have a certain regular period. I don't know whether they're going to okay with that, but they have to make sure that North Korea accepts those kind of inspections at least, and then probably move on from there.
So they'll make a fake place where to go inspect, and then
Yeah, you're
somewhere
right,
else they're going
exactly.
to have it. That's exactly how it happened. Remember, he said, if the United States can guarantee our safety, guarantee our
Guarantee
safety,
their safety.
and that is a big word, because all he has to say, or the North Korean regime has to say is, we feel threatened, our security is not guaranteed, therefore we have to continue on what we're supposed to do. I kind of see it as an analogy from like a police officer. When you pull somebody over for a ticket, the number one, officer, please let me go, I'll never do it again. And then, but the same person gets caught, speeding through the same highway. Okay? So North Korea is infamous. Yes, I do want to see peace. Yes, I want to believe, but be super careful, because historically this has been happening this way for the past 3 generations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And North Korea, they kicked out the inspectors, as I believe, twice back in the early 2000s and 2005. They kicked out the inspectors. They might do that again. Probably, I would say probably the Trump administration would okay some of the things that they've been offering. I think we have to also have, there are 3 Americans that are detained in North Korea right now. They're imprisoned. They have to probably come out throughout the deal. I'm talking about,
And they're going to use
hypothetically,
that.
they're going to use that
They
card.
probably got arrested for that purpose.
Yeah, probably. But anyway, bring them back and inspections. I believe if they offer, hey, if United States, if you want to inspect us, please do. I think probably it's very tough at that point for U.S. to pull out. That's my opinion about this, and probably move on from there. I think North Korea's goal is they have been stricken with poverty, not just the people living there, but also the government officials. I've been reading some reports regarding it, that it's tough for them to even survive there. And if the generals don't get their pay or presence from the dictator himself, it becomes a very shaky regime. And Kim Jong-un doesn't want that. So I think he wants to escape these sanctions. He wants the sanctions to be lifted. That's his primary goal. And he wants to move on from there. But we have to always be careful about North Korea. I don't believe a word that comes out of their mouth, to be honest with you, like you said. So
yesterday I was listening to NPR, and there was this Korean American person who spent 6 months in Korea teaching at a private university, and her whole purpose was to write a book. So secretly she would write her book, hide what she did. But one of the things that she said yesterday was very striking. She goes, they lie. Even the little kids, sweet kids, she interacts with these people, and then all of a sudden they just turn on a dime, and then they can like no one's business.
Wow.
So the whole country has been sort of like
Brainwashed.
trained to be that way, and lying or saying something that is not true is something that to them has no consequence. Therefore, if they are training their people that way, then how much more so are the trained government people who will sit there? I mean, how many times have we seen the images on YouTube or anywhere where they're crying like
Crazy.
something really bad happened and it's just a parade and Kim Jong is just passing by, but they're like, hitting the ground and then
it's
hitting their
like
chest.
it's like Michael Jackson in his prime, right? When people were falling all over,
Like the
Korea
Beatles,
had
Beatles came, right?
Yeah.
So once again, I believe that we can achieve something, but be very careful.
Okay. Do you know that what North Korea is thinking about to send their diplomat to United States? I have been hearing words that Kim Yo-jong, the lady, the chilly smile that you were talking about. So I heard that they might be thinking about sending her over here. So,
well, she's got a softer character, and she's not demonized like the brother, because everybody knows that the brother is a tyrant.
Yes.
But once again, remember, she's the deputy minister of propaganda. So all these things about the death to the United States and they're the cause of all our suffering. She's the one who's putting it out there on the media.
Exactly. So we should have that in mind, and I think we should always be careful of whatever Kim Jong-un is planning. And we move on to our final topic of the day. It's the United States government versus the state of California. The Trump administration sued California over sanctuary protections. On March 6, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit in a federal district court in Sacramento outlining 3 ways California has preempted federal immigration law and impermissibly discriminated against the United States. Immigration is a federal matter, the suit argues, not a policy that varies from state to state. And in the lawsuit, it claims that the so-called sanctuary protections California affords to its 2.4 million illegal immigrants thus violates the constitutional principle, and that federal legislation is a supreme law of the land. Your thoughts on this big issue, Ben?
I was listening to an attorney, and then he put it this way. I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to go with what he was saying. California is within its right to actually, do what it's doing, because immigration...
Statewide, right?
Yes, immigration is more a civil matter, not a criminal matter. Therefore, if it goes to the Supreme Court, you'll probably, win. With that being said, the federal government, this is where they effectuate the most arrests than anywhere else. In a yearly basis, I saw some numbers, they do like 17,000 arrests for
per
undocumented.
year.
Therefore, California is the #1 source of business, if you kind of put it in a sort of that way. So they're hurting for business, and they need California. But the whole state is not cooperating. And even the chief of police of LA say we're not in the business and we're not going to help. And in all honesty, I really don't think that the average police officer who works the street really cares about the immigration status, but cares more about whether that person is committing a crime or not. And I think that is a way to approach law enforcement. ICE, in the other hand, their business is to arrest people who are here illegally or like undocumented, and I understand what they're supposed to do from a federal point of view. But California has taken a stand as such, and people have backed it, and I get it, there is division as to which side is the right side or not. Also, from a law enforcement point of view, is you obey or you follow the law, whether it's federal or state, and of course the city. So there's a lot of dynamics here. Is once again, everything that happens is super complicated. I think there's some moral implications as to how an individual who is a police officer or who is a politician has to follow. So on this one, I kind of feel that your morality will dictate as to how you're going to proceed depending on a case-by-case basis.
I believe the federal law should be superior to state laws. If every state kind of goes against the federal law, for instance, if a state were to go against Obamacare, I think that would be illegal. That's the stance that I see. And if I checked some numbers, and convicted criminals in America, I'm talking about illegal immigrants, there are 820,000 of them. And if you look at the federal prison, 13% of them are illegal immigrants. So percentage-wise, I believe there are a lot of percentage of illegal immigrants compared to the entire, probably there are some good illegal immigrants too, but the percentage-wise, they're much higher than the average population of the United States. And I also saw this, this is Texas governor back in, Rick Perry was a former governor of Texas. And between 2008 to 2014, there has been 642,564 illegal immigrants committing crime. So I think the numbers are really high. I think it's very hard for them to be law-abiding citizens. I mean, probably they can if they get like cash jobs, but other than that, I think that's why you see a lot of gangsters, a lot of elite gangster groups, like what was it, MS13. You have a lot of illegal immigrants there too. So I think the United States government is focusing more on the criminal illegal immigrants. If you see their raids that has been happening throughout the weekends, what was it? 250 people were arrested last weekend, right? Something like that. And more than half of them had some kind of convicted crimes, and some of them are like child abuse and drug related. It's like hardcore crimes. So I think what Oakland mayor did, Libby Schaaf, I think our viewers can see her on the background. She's a good-looking lady, but I think what she did was wrong. She gave this information to the constituents, and it's pretty much, alarming the illegal immigrants, also the criminal illegal immigrants, to, hey, get out. The ICE is coming for you. Get out before they come for you. So I think that's a wrong thing.
Well, they say the illegals, and they say
undocumented, or yeah.
But at the same time, is there a lot of times their crime is because they're here undocumented, and they get caught because of that status, not so much because of the crime they committed. I think everybody's in agreement that if you committed a violent crime, illegal or undocumented or documented or something, they should be put in jail, and then they should pay for the crime. There is no argument on that. But if you've been living here for 15, 20 years, and then all of a sudden, because ICE is cracking down, and then you get caught in the raid, and then you end up in jail, and then all of a sudden now you're a criminal because you were here undocumented, there is a moral dilemma when it comes to that.
Of course, I agree with you on that. There are some undocumented illegal immigrants here who's trying to, other than coming here illegally, they're trying to abide by the law. And actually, some of them are very more careful than some of the citizens. I know some of them too.
Because of the status.
Yeah, because of their status. But there are the other flip side. For instance, what happened to like Kate Steinle or Jamil Shah, their kids got killed by illegal immigrant who has been kicked out 5-6 times, and they came back right back in. So that's why I think there needs to be a wall to block them, because they crossed the country. They didn't take plane over here. So, but anyway, that's another issue. So I think there's a flip side. Of course, if you're the victim's family, they feel very angry about this whole thing. Why does their kid? How come their kid have to be shot from an illegal immigrant who's not even supposed to be here, who's the country kicked out 5-6 times, but they came back right back in. So I think U.S. government is doing the right thing in my mind. At least I would say this: if they're convicted criminals, we kick them out or send them to federal prison. If they're not, probably I would hope that they let go of them. There should be some kind of middle line there.
I mean, depending on which side you see it, when you kind of give specifics like that, yeah, I could see why they'll be angry. But crime is committed everywhere, and it's the bad person committing this crime, not because of the legal status. I mean, more crime is committed by probably people who were born here, and then they're full-fledged Americans.
But you said, I told you the federal prison here, 13% of them are illegal immigrants.
Yeah. Federal prison,
yeah.
I guarantee you a lot of that percentage, they didn't really commit any crimes, except for
We're talking about like pot or those kind of issues.
I mean, those could be some, and at the same time, they just got arrested because of the legal status in the United States.
Just by the legal status? I kind of doubt that. It's the federal.
I know people who actually have been arrested, and they're law-abiding citizen in every
Just
sense.
but you're saying that just by smoking pot, they're in the
No,
federal
not
prison?
even that. They just got stopped and then they got arrested and then they ended up in federal detention.
But California doesn't do that, right?
Absolutely, they do.
But
Well,
not
I mean,
as
in San Diego and a lot of
but
the
not as
casinos.
much, not as much though. I mean,
ICE hangs around the casinos
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot, and then when they
But-
just do random stops.
but to me, I'm not talking about just that. The criminal activities in Texas between 2008, Texas is the number 2 illegal immigrants state. Number 1 is
yeah.
California, and number 2 is Texas. But more than 500,000, between 2008 to 2014. These are, criminal activities committed by illegal
You know
immigrants.
how I feel
right?
about surveys and percentages. It can be manipulated to make.
I
it
don't think
look
these are
left
manipulated.
or right.
No, I don't
And we
think this
always
is a
talk
this
about
is a
left or
government.
right.
Yeah, but this is a government, produced data. So you got to go with some numbers. We can't say everything is like just fake, right?
I agree with you on that one, but at the same time, you can, if you kind of.
But then what do you think
drill it
about?
down,
So
it's
what do you say to people like to Kate Steinle or Jamil Shah or many of the people who got their life taken away by illegal immigrants? What can you say to those people?
I mean,
You know?
it is extremely unfortunate. I feel so bad that it happened, but it's bad people who do this, and then the legal status is sort of something else compared. People.
But
who
you
commit
understand
crime-
the anger, right?
You know,
behind
I
it.
think they just put it. Then you could say, men. It was a man, so let's get rid of all the men because
No.
it was created,
Okay.
committed. Or if the certain nationality or certain color of the skin, these are just bad people by nature. It's not so much, and we cannot delineate or we cannot
Okay.
really say
Uh-huh.
because of left-handed people. I'm left-handed.
Yeah.
In the old days, we were called evil.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's why in Latin is diestra and siniestra, which means evil. And so imagine if I lived in the old days, I would have probably been burned or something because I'm left-handed.
No, so like for the DACA situation, I'm all for it. 1.8 million, let's make them all legal. Okay, I'm with you on that. But look at this. I'll go back to Kate Steinle because it's a really classic case. In this case, he got deported 5 times, but he came back, right? And do you know why he came back to San Francisco? Because it's a sanctuary city, which means they protect illegal immigrants. That's why they came back and he committed this heinous crime. So I think there should be some kind of huge crackdown on this particular thing. And I believe California is wrong on this front in totality. And I think federal law, there needs to be some kind of law that's going active. You can't just say state law overrules United States law. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, federal government is supposed to be above the state, but at the same time, California is within its right to do something that they feel, and it's going to get decided in the Supreme
Yeah.
Court.
Who do you
the
think
way
is
it
gonna?
is.
Who do you think is gonna win
I
in the
think
Supreme Court?
California is going to win.
Really?
Yeah.
I believe the U.S. is gonna
Because
win.
this morning, like I said, I was listening to both sides of the argument, and then the argument made by the
The left side?
attorneys in California made more sense than the attorneys.
No, I think
for the federal government.
you can't, because immigration law is not made by the state. It's made by the federal government. It's not, so they have nothing to do with this, to be honest with you. So I think what Jerry Brown did, it's shameful for him to, say that, to criticize the U.S. Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, and also Kamala Harris and, Libby Schaaf. They're all wrong. I mean, of course, they're always on the party for the people of illegals. But sometimes I even doubt that. They're not even signing, cooperating with the Republicans of legalizing all DACA immigrants. They're not even, talking on the table. They're just trying to make this issue and say, oh, it was a Republican, and try to win midterms. Everything about the left, I think, they're just, being obstructionist and destructionist right now. What's going on? If you look at this, and try to just play this politics game. That's how I see this whole thing.
Well, you
and I
can
think
say-
legally, U.S. Supreme Court will side with the federal government, not the state of California.
You can say the same thing about the Republicans, and I think it's shameful that neither side is really budging to kind of come to an agreement. I think people should be a little bit more open, whether you're,
Yeah.
Republican or Democrat, to come to a resolution. But, we put these people in power, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. So one thing that I do urge you is that whether you're Republican or Democrat, you have to vote.
Yeah.
So you get people who are responsible, get elected, so solutions can be brought in so we can kind of fix our problems.
You're right. Yeah, and we hopefully, reach that point someday in our lives.
We have to keep on
Yeah,
trying.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's our show for today. And please remember, the most important thing is that it's not about left or right. It's about being right or wrong. To stay up to date with our latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.